My name is Judge Amara Oak, and I am a 50-year-old woman living in an old city rich with history. I have dedicated my life to the law and pursuing justice, believing wholeheartedly that fairness is crucial in every corner of our world. I touch the lives of so many people in my position, helping them navigate their struggles through the court system every day. But there is one memory from my past that has haunted me throughout my entire life. It was the day I encountered a woman who would become my nemesis, a teacher whose actions would echo in the hallways of my mind for decades. This woman was Miss Hargrove. When I was just a student in high school, she had a way of dismantling young spirits. The way she looked at us, especially people of color, was laced with disdain. I was just 16, an ambitious girl who had dreams beyond the four walls of my classroom, but Miss Hargrove wanted to place me in a box. One day, in front of the entire class, she mocked me for answering a question incorrectly, all while her eyes sparkled with malice. "You will never amount to anything," she said, and the words cut deep. From that day forward, I felt the weight of her ignorance and prejudice follow me through high school and beyond. Now, fast forward to the present day, 30 years later. I am preparing for a substantial case at the courthouse when I learn that Miss Hargrove, my old high school teacher, is retiring. This news hits me like a freight train. Not only is she leaving a career she should never have had, but she is going to be given a retirement party. I can already hear the accolades that will be thrown her way, celebrating her so-called dedication to education. The thought of this feels like a slap in the face to me and everyone she ever belittled. I know I have to do something, but at first I am riddled with doubt. I think about how small I felt back in high school, and for a fleeting moment it makes me hesitant. However, I am not the girl I once was. I wear a robe and wig as a judge and have fought for justice in many forms. This is my chance to confront my past and to expose her for the harm she caused. I begin to plot out how I can make a statement at the retirement celebration. My initial plan is simple. I will attend the gathering, stand up in front of everyone, and tell my story. I reach out to a few of my former classmates who had similar experiences, and I find out that many of them still feel the trauma from Miss Hargrove's treatment. We decide to organize a surprise presentation at her retirement party and expose of her true character. As I begin to gather more and more information, I plan my speech meticulously. However, trouble arises. I learn that Miss Hargrove has friends in high places who are not merely going to let me disrupt her celebration. One evening, I receive an anonymous letter warning me to back off, stating that if I interfere with the festivities, I could face consequences that could jeopardize my career. The letter makes my heart race with fear and anger. I realize that my past is more intricately tied to the present than I originally thought. The feeling of hopelessness washes over me as I question whether I am ready to go through with my plan, but deep inside me ignites a fierce desire for justice. What about all the others whose lives she tried to control? I push through the barriers, telling myself that once again I cannot let her win. I decide to go forward with my plan regardless of the risks involved. On the day of the retirement party, I wear a formal yet fierce outfit, ready to reclaim my voice. The hall is buzzing with joyous laughter as I step inside. Miss Hargrove is the center of attention, surrounded by an air of celebration. My heart pounds in my chest, but my resolve only strengthens. Finally, after the speeches have concluded, I stand up and make my way to the front of the room. Silence falls upon the guests, and eyes turn toward me in surprise. My heart is racing, but I embrace the quiet, taking a moment to gather my thoughts. I begin to speak, and my voice rings out across the room. I recount my experiences in high school, the ridicule, and the hurt that Miss Hargrove inflicted on not just me, but so many of my classmates. I reveal the injustices we all faced at her hands. The air becomes thick with tension as the guests shift uncomfortably in their seats. No one expected this. My courage builds, and I challenge the complacency of those who blindly applauded her for years. I push against the fear and recognize that what I am doing is not merely about me, but about every individual she ever belittled. As I finish my speech, a small part of me worries about the repercussions this may bring. But as I look around the room, I see stunned expressions ranging from disbelief to outright anger, especially among my former classmates who stand behind me, united. Suddenly, one of them, David, speaks up, sharing his stories of misbehavior and injustice under Miss Hargrove's rule. One by one, others join in, revealing their own traumatic tales. The response is overwhelming, and I feel a sense of relief wash over me. The crowd begins to murmur and fidget as the truth hits like a thunderclap, penetrating the facade of her accomplishments. Miss Hargrove stands there, her face flushed and her mask slipping. That day we stand together in solidarity, confronting a person who had felt invincible for too long. The chaos of emotions swirls around the room, and one by one the guests begin to rise, some applauding our courage and others in a righteous outrage against Miss Hargrove. The shroud of secrecy has been lifted, and I suddenly feel a weight being released off my shoulders. In a twist I did not expect, a local news crew happened to be covering the event and caught my speech on camera. This exposure led to a flood of media coverage, and soon Miss Hargrove was being called out for her behavior, not just in our town but across the country. I never dreamed that my moment of retaliation would create such a strong wave of change, but it did. My life took on a new normal. I got calls from former students telling me how inspired they felt and how they too wanted to speak out against their past traumatic experiences. In the end, we led a movement, showing that our voices mattered and needed to be heard. Although I entered that room looking for revenge, I left with liberation and a transformative experience. I had turned my pain into power and gathered others along the way. Miss Hargrove faded into the shadows, but her legacy as a bully was finally exposed, and in that revelation I was gifted a sense of peace I have long desired. Justice does not always come easily, but sometimes it only takes a single voice to unveil the truth.